You knew something was wrong the moment they stopped arguing. The council room is never quiet, not fully. There's always someone whispering, shifting, breathing too loud. But tonight, it was silent. And silence inside a room full of powerful men is never peace. It's preparation. You walked in like you always do, measured steps, neutral expression, no visible tension. Because when you lead long enough, you learn something simple. The first man to show emotion loses leverage. The boss sat at the head of the table. Older now, thinner, watching more than speaking. Your brother stood near the far wall. Not seated, observing. That's intentional. He doesn't want the optics of equality yet. Not publicly. You took your seat. No one greeted you. That's when your stomach tightened. You called this meeting, you said calmly to the boss. Yes. His voice was steady. Too steady. Agenda? You asked. He looked around the room before answering. The final vote was a gut punch. 7-5. My entire vision, everything I had poured into this organization, sidelined by a council I helped create. It felt like a betrayal, a carefully orchestrated coup dressed up in corporate procedure. They called it restructuring. I called it what it was, a power grab. It all started subtly. Whispers in the hallways, closed-door meetings I wasn't invited to. My key projects were suddenly under review, my direct reports reassigned to cross-functional teams. The leader of the opposition was Marcus, a man whose ambition was only matched by his silver-tongued charm. He saw me not as a collaborator, but as an obstacle. He was a master of political maneuvering. He didn't attack my work directly, that would have been too obvious. Instead, he sowed seeds of doubt. Is this initiative truly scalable? He'd ask in open forums, his brow furrowed with faux concern. Are we allocating resources in the most efficient way? He framed his challenges as questions of fiscal responsibility, painting me as a reckless visionary disconnected from the bottom line. He turned my strengths, my passion, my long-term strategic thinking into perceived weaknesses. I tried to fight back, of course. I presented data, performance metrics, testimonials from satisfied partners. I showed them the growth, the innovation, the very foundation I had built. But facts are flimsy weapons against a narrative. Marcus wasn't selling a strategy. He was selling a story of fear and uncertainty, with himself as the steady-handed savior. The day of the vote, the tension was so thick you could taste it. I watched as people I had mentored, people I had championed, avoided my gaze. They had been swayed, promised promotions, or perhaps just worn down by the constant political friction. When the final tally was announced, there was a quiet, almost apologetic applause. Marcus offered me a condescending smile, a silent checkmate. Standing there, I felt a strange mix of anger and clarity. They had taken my position, but they couldn't take my knowledge or my spirit. This wasn't the end of my story. It was just the end of a chapter. As I packed up my office, I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what I was going to build next, free from the constraints of those who valued power over progress. This setback wasn't a defeat. It was a release. And my next move? It would be entirely my own. What would you do in a situation like this? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Have you ever wondered what happens after a powerful leader is dethroned? Let's dive into the story of Julian, a visionary leader who built a global tech empire from the ground up, only to be unceremoniously voted out by the very board he appointed. Julian, forced into an early retirement he never wanted, watched from the sidelines as his life's work began to crumble. Profits plummeted, innovation stalled, and morale hit an all-time low. The media had a field day, painting him as a relic of the past, while the new leadership fumbled, making one disastrous decision after another. Just as Julian started to accept his new, quiet life, he received a call. It was the board. They were desperate. They begged him to return, not as CEO, but as a special advisor to help guide the company back on track. Swallowing his pride and driven by a lingering loyalty to the company he still loved, he agreed. He walked back into the gleaming headquarters, a place that felt both familiar and alien. The air was thick with a tension he couldn't quite place. His old team greeted him with a mix of relief and caution. He began his work, digging into the company's recent failures. He started noticing strange inconsistencies in the financial reports, projects that were secretly defunded, and key data that seemed to be deliberately buried. His requests for information were met with polite but firm resistance. His access to certain servers was mysteriously revoked. The new CEO, a man named Marcus whom Julian had once mentored, was always too busy to meet, offering vague reassurances that everything was under control. Julian realized this wasn't just incompetence. Something far more sinister was at play. One late night, working alone in his old office, he stumbled upon a fragmented email chain on an old backup server. The pieces started to click into place. His ousting wasn't just a corporate power play. It was the first step in a meticulously planned conspiracy. The board hadn't brought him back for his guidance. They brought him back to be a scapegoat. The plan was simple. Let the company continue to fail under his advisement, then pin the final catastrophic collapse squarely on him, erasing his legacy for good and allowing them to sell off the company's assets for a massive personal profit. Now the man who built an empire is in a race against time. He's not just fighting for his reputation or his company anymore. He's fighting against a web of betrayal spun by the very people he once trusted. He's isolated, with powerful enemies at every turn, and the clock is ticking. The threat is bigger, more personal, and far more dangerous than he ever imagined. He has to expose the truth before they silence him permanently, turning his comeback into his final downfall. What would you do if the people you trusted most were setting you up for the ultimate betrayal? This is a story of power, deception, and one man's fight for redemption against impossible odds. The call stayed in your head all night. They're planning something permanent. Most anonymous warnings are useless. Fear disguised as information. But this one bothered you, because it matched the timing too perfectly. The council had just removed you. Authority was fragmented. Rivals were testing roots. And Felix was moving quietly between captains. That's not coincidence. That's preparation. The next morning the council met again, not publicly. Closed room. Only captains. You weren't invited, which meant Marco had to update you through whispers and half conversations. They're arguing again, Marco told you over coffee. About what? You asked. About control. Of course they were. Because when a throne disappears, everyone suddenly believes they deserve it. Felix didn't wait long to show his hand. By the afternoon, two captains shifted their loyalty toward him. Not openly, not officially, but their roots started aligning with his suggestions. Small changes, shipment timing, protection assignments. The kind of things that look harmless individually, but together, they build structure. Your structure. Except this one didn't belong to you anymore. Your brother noticed it too. He came to your office that evening. Didn't sit. Just stood near the window looking out at the city. You're letting him build momentum, he said quietly. Yes. Why? Because momentum reveals allies, he looked at you. That's risky. Everything is now, he crossed his arms. You could stop it, yes, but you won't, not yet. He turned toward you. You're still assuming this is about power. It is. No, he said slowly. This is about removal. That word again, removal. Not politically, personally. You leaned back slightly. Explain. Your brother exhaled slowly. They're not trying to replace you. Then what? They're trying to erase you. Silence settled between you. Heavy. Because if that's true, then this vote wasn't the end of something. It was step one. And step two might be far more permanent. You heard something, you said. Yes. From who? Felix? Your eyes narrowed. You spoke to him? He wanted to. Why? Your brother held your gaze. To recruit me. The room went still. What did he say? You asked quietly. He said the council needs unity. And? He said unity requires one direction. You didn't respond, because you already knew where this was going. And he thinks that direction is him, you said. Yes. Where do you fit in? Your brother hesitated slightly, then answered honestly. He wants me beside him. That made sense. Your brother commands loyalty, not as much as you, but enough to stabilize perception. If Felix controls your brother, then your old support base fractures. Clean, strategic, effective. And what did you say? You asked. Your brother looked at you carefully. I told him I'd think about it. You nodded slowly. Good, that buys time. But it also means Felix believes the door is open. He's accelerating, your brother continued. How? He wants a second vote. Your pulse slowed. A vote for what? He didn't hesitate. Permanent removal. There it was. Confirmation. The anonymous warning wasn't paranoia. It was truth. You stood up slowly. Walked toward the window. The city stretched below like a map of quiet wars. So the temporary removal was a test, you said. Yes. They expected me to react. Yes. But I didn't. No. And now Felix wants to finish it. Your brother nodded. You felt something strange then. Not fear, not anger, clarity. Felix wasn't rushing because he was reckless. He was rushing because he knew something. Something about the boss. Something about timing. Has the boss said anything? You asked. No, that's what worried you. Because the boss always intervenes before fractures become visible. But this time, silence. Have you seen him recently? Your brother asked. Not since the council vote. That's strange. Yes. The boss disappearing during a succession struggle isn't normal. It's dangerous, because power vacuums attract knives. That night you visited the clinic again, quiet, private, the same guards. But something was different. The boss wasn't in his room. The bed was empty. Machines disconnected. You turned to the doctor. Where is he? The doctor hesitated, then said something that changed everything. He left. Your stomach tightened. When? This morning. Alone? No. With who? The doctor looked uncomfortable, then answered. With Felix. The room went cold. Felix, not a captain. Not a guard. Felix. You stepped outside slowly. Your brother was waiting near the car. Well? He asked. He left. With who? Felix. Your brother's eyes widened slightly. That's not good. No. Because if Felix has the boss, he controls narrative. And narrative controls loyalty. Your phone buzzed. A message. From Felix. Short. Direct. Council meeting tomorrow. You stared at the screen. Your brother looked over your shoulder. That's the vote, he said. Yes. Permanent removal. You replied with 2 words. I'll attend. Your brother frowned. You're walking into that? Yes. They'll outvote you. Probably. Then why go? You looked at him calmly. Because they think this ends tomorrow. And it doesn't? No. That night you barely slept. Not because you were afraid. Because you were thinking. Felix moving too fast. The boss disappearing with him. Council pushing permanent removal. Someone is forcing the timeline. And forced timelines reveal weaknesses. Morning came quietly. The council chamber looked exactly the same. But the atmosphere was different, tighter, more decisive. Felix sat closer to the head of the table now. Closer to the boss's seat. Your brother took his usual place along the wall, watching. You walked in slowly. Calm, unhurried. Felix smiled slightly. You came, of course. He leaned forward. We're resolving instability today. You nodded. Good. The captains exchanged glances. Felix raised his hand. Council vote, he announced. Permanent removal from leadership authority. There it was. Final. No return. No oversight. Just elimination from power. Felix looked at the room. Hands began to rise. 1, 2, 3, 5. Then your brother moved. Not loudly. Not dramatically, but enough to stop the count. Felix frowned. You're not council. No, your brother said calmly. But I have something they should hear first. Felix's expression hardened. What? Your brother looked around the room slowly, then said, the boss didn't leave with Felix. The room froze. Felix stood up abruptly. That's not relevant, your brother continued. He was taken. Silence exploded across the table. Felix's voice sharpened. You're lying. Your brother reached into his jacket and placed something on the table, a recording device. Listen, the captains leaned forward. Felix didn't move, because suddenly, the vote wasn't the biggest problem in the room anymore. The room was dead silent. 12 men, their faces like stone, stared at the small recorder on the table. My brother, who had placed it there, remained standing. His jaw was tight, his eyes sharp. You see, recordings are a dangerous game in our world. They strip away the politics, the convenient interpretations. They leave only the raw, undeniable truth. And history has shown us that truth can topple empires far more effectively than any bullet. Dario, one of the oldest captains, broke the silence. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of years. Play it, he said. My brother's gaze didn't waver. He simply pressed the button. A burst of static, then a voice. It was weak, aged, but instantly recognizable. It was the boss. If they rush succession, they reveal themselves. The air in the room grew heavy. I saw Felix flinch. It was almost imperceptible, just a flicker of his eyes, but I caught it. The recording went on. My voice wasn't on it. Felix's wasn't either. It was just the boss, speaking slowly, deliberately, like a chess master outlining his final moves. Pressure reveals ambition. A short pause. Ambition without patience destroys structure. The captains exchanged uneasy glances. Suddenly, the vote they were all here to cast felt less like a decision and more like a trap. A trap set not by Felix, but by the very man he sought to replace. The recording crackled again. Then, the boss delivered the line that changed everything. If they vote him out, watch who moves first. One by one. Every head in the room turned toward Felix. There was no aggression in their eyes, just a dawning, chilling recognition. Felix's mouth opened, then snapped shut. He knew, as we all did, that any explanation he offered now would sound like a desperate confession. But the recording wasn't done. If someone tries to remove him permanently, they are not protecting the empire. Another loaded pause. They are protecting themselves. The walls seemed to close in. Felix finally found his voice, but it was thin, brittle. This proves nothing. In this room, a lack of confidence is a death sentence. My brother stopped the recording. The silence that followed was even heavier than before. Dario leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on Felix. Felix, he asked softly, why were you with the boss yesterday? Felix's gaze darted around the table, desperately searching for an ally, for some way to regain control. He asked to see me, he said. And why didn't he return with you? Another captain chimed in. Felix hesitated. It was only for a second, but that second cost him everything. I took a small step forward, just enough to draw the room's focus. The boss left the clinic yesterday morning, I stated calmly. Yes, Felix replied, a little too quickly. With you, yes, and now he's missing. The word hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Missing, not resting. Not on a trip. Missing. A crack appeared in Felix's perfect composure. He's recovering privately. Where? Dario pressed. Another fatal hesitation from Felix. Then he made his final mistake. You don't need to know. That was it. The absolute worst thing he could have said. In this world, secrecy during a transition is manipulation. And manipulation is a threat to everyone. Whispers erupted around the table. Quiet conversations, but they were building momentum, and momentum shifts power. Felix saw it slipping away. You're all overreacting, he snapped, his voice sharp with panic. This was about stability. My brother's voice cut through the noise, calm and final. No, he looked directly at Felix. This was about timing. Felix turned toward you. You think you're clever? He said quietly. You let them remove you so you could look innocent. You didn't answer. Because the room wasn't listening to him anymore. They were thinking, replaying the last 7 days. The vote, the fragmentation, the rival incursions. Felix consolidating influence. Patterns were becoming clear. Dario finally stood. Slowly, heavy hands resting on the table. We need to find the boss. Felix stepped forward quickly. He's safe. Then bring him here, Dario said. Felix didn't move. And that was the final mistake. Because refusing transparency inside a council room means one thing. You're hiding something. The door behind you opened, not violently, not dramatically, just quietly. Every head turned. And then the boss walked in, alive, thinner, but very much present. No one spoke. Not Felix, not the captains, not even your brother, because the only thing more powerful than suspicion is confirmation. The boss walked slowly to the head of the table, his seat, his position, his authority. Felix stepped backward without realizing it. A small movement, but the room noticed. You move fast, the boss said calmly. No anger, no accusation, just observation. Felix swallowed. You asked for stability. I asked for patience. Silence. Felix tried once more. I protected the structure. No, the boss replied quietly. You tried to control it. The boss sat down slowly. Pain flickered across his face, but his voice stayed steady. I created pressure, he said. I wanted to see who fractured. His eyes moved around the room. To see who rushed. Then they stopped on Felix. And to see who waited. His gaze shifted to you. You waited, he said. Not praise. Not ceremony, just recognition. Then he looked at the captains. You voted him out. Several men lowered their eyes slightly. Not ashamed, just aware. That was correct, the boss continued. The room looked up. Felix blinked in surprise. You needed to test his reaction, the boss said. And he passed. Your brother leaned against the wall slightly, watching. Felix tried one last argument. Then why not restore him immediately? The boss looked at him, long, cold. Because the test isn't finished. The room froze again. Felix's shoulders dropped slightly. Hope. He thought the game wasn't over. The boss leaned back slowly. When power transitions, he said quietly, 2 things destroy empires. He raised 2 fingers. Fear, another finger. And ambition. He looked at Felix. You showed both. Felix's voice cracked slightly. You're removing me? No. The boss shook his head slowly. You removed yourself. 2 guards stepped forward. Not violently. Not urgently. Just final. Felix didn't resist. He looked at you once. Not angry, not pleading, just understanding. He miscalculated the pressure. The door closed behind him. And suddenly the room felt lighter, but also quieter, because one truth still remained. The boss was dying, and everyone in the room knew it. He looked at you again. You don't want the throne, he said. No, you want structure. Yes, he nodded slowly. Good. because thrones create enemies, but structure creates survival. Then he looked around the table. Leadership remains unchanged. The captains exhaled slightly, not relieved, just stable again. But the boss wasn't finished. He leaned forward slightly. When I'm gone? The room went silent. There will be 2 pillars. His eyes moved between you. And your brother. Not successor, structure. Just like he planned. Later that night, you stood on the rooftop again. Looking at the city lights, your brother stepped beside you. You knew he was testing you, he said. I suspected. And if you failed? You shrugged slightly. Then the city would be learning someone else's name. Your brother laughed quietly. You're calmer than I expected. You looked out across the skyline. Because calm wasn't confidence. Calm was understanding. Power doesn't arrive with applause. It arrives with pressure. And tonight, you proved you could carry it.